I am an artist living in beautiful Vermont, USA, and I have a lot of questions. So I engage the minds of the people that I meet, poets, writers, artists. I explore what's inside and share it with you. My name is Ricky McGeckran, and I am eager to know. I am here with Bryan Santiago, who is writer, director, and producer of the movie Grafton. Is it a movie, are we calling it? Or is it a treatment of a movie?
It's a short film.
A short film.
Yeah.
And I saw it at the Bellows Falls Opera House. And it was part of a collection of all sorts of short films. And it really stood out for me. And I immediately ran up to you and said, I'd like to have you on my podcast. So thank you so much for hanging out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And just so you know, this is the first podcast that I have recorded in my home studio in Vermont. All of my other podcasts that I've done since I moved to Vermont have been at FAC TV. So this is a bit of an experiment. We'll see how everything goes.
I'm honored.
All right, good. So let's talk about what I saw. We can talk about it creatively. We can talk about it technically. I just thought it was great.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a challenge, making even though I have a long history in performing arts, dance, theater, multimedia, this was my first standalone film. And it was challenging. 3 days before we were meant to go into production, we had to cancel the production because of COVID.
Okay.
And so we ended up shooting it in August, which actually served the project very well, to have it in the summer instead of what was mud season that came early.
Right.
And I went with the flow. I said, okay, the old me would have been really like raging and upset, and it's not happening when I want it to. But it was really a moment about acceptance for me, and knowing that it would happen and it would be better served in some way that was not yet revealed to me.
Okay. Wow. That is a wonderful way of looking at it. You had a series of successes in New York in theater and in theater production. And then you moved to Los Angeles, and that's where it really changed. And it was a big struggle. Mm-hmm. The creative environment was different. The way that the creative person was viewed was very different. You had this, I'm not doing this anymore moment. I moved back to New York, and you tried to get things moving, and you did get things moving with a production, and then you had some unforeseen circumstances happen to you, and then you're just like, I am kind of not seeing progress. It's not going anywhere. I don't see a vision for where this is going anywhere. And you had this side hustle or secondary business where it's completely, it's all like branding and marketing. And that's when you were in Vermont. Is that correct?
Yeah, it started in New York, but then I continued my business in Vermont, and I was living in Vermont and New York. Okay. I was going back and forth.
So let's talk about Vermont, because I know that Vermont means a lot to me. It means a lot to you. Mm-hmm. And it is a very, it's an extremely special place, for many reasons. I think it's a really special place for creative people. Mm-hmm. And would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And tell me about that. Having lived in Los Angeles and New York, and when we just talked about Vermont, your face lit up and you are smiling.
Because I love it here. I feel so many things about Vermont. I grew up in Connecticut, and we were not a ski family by any stretch. So I just felt like, Vermont's a place people go skiing and farmers, and I hear it's really nice, but it just wasn't on my radar. And then when I first stepped into Brattleboro, when I was camping in Hinsdale, I was like, what is this? Like, it just has this vibe. And I love Vermont because it's just far enough away from Boston and New York that people are not presenting, and they are kind of more authentic. They don't really need to think about, like, how do I present? They just mostly just feel more like they are who they are.
And the way I describe that is people are present. When you were talking to someone here, they're looking at you, they're paying attention to you, they are listening to you. They're not looking around. There's not a million distractions visually, audibly. You are actually in the moment paying attention to someone. And I immediately noticed that when I moved here.
Absolutely. It's, you have more time, you have more space. People here, I'm not someone who's superficial, and I want to go really deep into what's going on with people, which is hence why Los Angeles didn't work for me. But not that that doesn't happen there. It's just harder to find the people who want to do that with you. Here, I find it so much easier for people to get into really in-depth conversations. I find the people to be a lot kinder. And I just love the space and the beauty. I mean, it's just to me, it just creates this place where your mind can just be at ease. And when you're at ease and you're not inundated with all of these crazy distractions like in New York City, you can actually be an antenna for the things that you're trying to receive, regardless of whatever type of creativity you're involved in. It's clarity.
100% agree. I think you just articulated that so beautifully. Do you think everyone could be an antenna? Or do you think that that is because of you and I are who we are?
I think everybody can.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny because even my husband will say, "Oh, I'm not a creative person," because he's a medical person. But yet our backyard is like gorgeous with these ponds and this landscaping. And I'm like, yes, you are. Look at that. That's your creative outlet.
Yeah.
What people, and even listening to your other, podcasts, like people think creativity is this, I don't know, this thing. It's everywhere. It's all the time.
It is everywhere. Yeah. Wonderful. Let's shift back to Grafton, the short film, and what you think that could become, because that closely relates to Vermont, because I know your vision for where that short film, what it can become, is tied to how you feel about Vermont. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah. I knew that I wanted to get back to writing and creating, and I had a few things in my business where I had worked with people who are kind of more well-established artists who kind of were suggesting, like, why aren't you doing this anymore? Like, you obviously have talent. Like, from working with them on their stuff, they could see, and they knew some of and so I did get some encouragement from them and some other people. So I got pushed back in that direction. And then my grandmother had passed away, who I was very close with. And I've been very lucky. I haven't experienced a lot of death in my life. So that was a big deal for me. And almost immediately I took to writing, and I created the story of Grafton. I was with someone who was a narcissistic gaslighter. I had just moved to Vermont. My experience about moving to a new place and a new culture was very overwhelming in a good way. I was like, oh, wait, life can be like this. And then, I just got pushed into writing again. And, Miasm, my feature script that I almost produced years ago, that's still been with me for like 13 years. But Grafton was just like came out. And then suddenly.
It just came out.
It just came out. It took me a month. It was done.
Wow.
And then a lot of people got on board. I'm very lucky that a friend of mine, who's kind of like a mentor, a best friend, encouraged me to continue exploring that story, kind of set it up like it could be a proof of concept for a series. So, yeah, I went right into Grafton. COVID happened. Everyone knows about that. There's no need to get into it. But then it actually did happen. And so the short was done. We were in 20 film festivals. We won 9 awards. We got 6 nominations. It was kind of an extended run because of COVID. So it was more of like a 2.5-year run at the festival circuit.
And do you have to go to the festivals, or do you go to them?
I went to as many as I could afford to go to.
Okay, and I know you're an introvert. Was that hard for you to talk about your film, or is that you're comfortable talking talking about the film with lots of people?
I'm getting better at it.
Okay.
It's not, it doesn't come easily to me because I get very lost in my thoughts,
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can relate. I'm curious. So when you have a film, you submit it to a film festival, and what is the point of going to a film festival? And like, why would you go? Like, what is the goal of being there? I
I
know
think,
nothing about this.
yeah, I think a lot of people, depending on the project, have different goals and how far along the project is as far as like in a person's career, right?
Okay.
And for me, it was just, I couldn't believe I made something that was like standalone, that wasn't part of a theatrical production. And also, I wanted to share it with the world. I wanted to see how it was received. And I wanted to start building a community in the film world. So I would go to these film festivals and I meet a lot of people, other actors, other directors. Great experience at almost all of them. And make contacts. Of course, it does help when you're trying to build a case. Now, when I pitch potential investors or production companies, I could say, I have a short. It was in 20 film festivals. It won certain awards. And so that gives it a little bit of weight and gravitas that the person might consider you more
Understood.
if
Okay.
you just made a short.
When you made the short, you made it with the intention that it would be made into something potentially bigger and it would be shopped to be made into a bigger project. It wasn't okay. Now, what is it like? I remember sitting in that movie theater watching that and thinking, this must be incredible to have this be your creative output. What does that feel like to see something on the big screen compared to choreography or live theater? Like, how would you compare that creative experience of connecting with people with your art?
To me, it's similar as a stage production in a way, just because my film mostly was shown to smaller audiences.
Okay.
Like Dances with Films was probably the largest film festival that we got into, and that was sharing it with 100 people or more. And it's weird when I a lot of artists may say this or writers, but I really feel like because it's such a collaborative art form, it really doesn't feel like, oh, it's mine or I
Yeah,
did
I
it.
can see that.
It's like, oh, look what we did.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that to be like, go team. I do feel like that. And I'm not being self deprecating or like, trying to be overly humble. It's just sometimes, even when I read something that I wrote, I'm like, somebody else wrote this. It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like mine.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, as I mentioned, I don't have any experience with filmmaking, but I always think it's so interesting when you see like the star of a movie being interviewed in like representing like a big movie. And then you look at behind the scenes and like there's hundreds of people that were beyond. And I know what it's like to work on a project with 150 people. So I have done that. And to have like one person, who was a single role in the whole project, be kind of out front, that always seemed a bit strange.
Well, most people don't want to get into the details, and most people want it to be make believe, and they don't want to know. It's like me with music, right? I love and music is everything to me. Being someone who is a dancer choreographer, it helps me write my scenes. I love it. When people start talking about the technical aspects of music, I'm like deer in headlights. I'm like, I don't know and I don't care because this is such an emotional thing for me that it's almost like I don't want to know how it works technically. I don't
You
want to
know,
think about that. I just want to think about how it makes me feel.
See, I think you and I I think we overlap in many ways, but it's clear that we are very different in many ways because when I saw your film, the first thing that I thought of, well, I thought of a lot of wonderful things, but one of the big things I did think of was how much work was behind this, and also right behind me is my piano. I'm studying piano. And the most interesting thing about learning piano is music theory, which is basically like the technical architecture behind music, which it sounds like you couldn't care less about it. That to me is so interesting. But I also have a math and science background, so I think that's why I like to know. I need to know how everything works.
I can see that, and I
Yeah.
can hear that in your podcast. It's a great curiosity you have. I'm an extremely emotional person,
Yeah.
double water sign. So I'm to me everything is emotion and trying to build containers for those emotions to live in. That's what I love about film, because then you've captured the emotions.
Nice. What are the next steps for Grafton? What are you looking for? What are you actively doing as it relates to this?
So this comes down to the community piece that we were talking about and how it's more than a film, and it's getting more of Vermont involved. So one thing I learned about, when you're trying to put your film out there, especially if it's not a huge Hollywood film and you don't have a huge marketing team, everything about the film, all the layers of making it and what it's about and how it touches people, reaches people, and who's involved, that's all so important in getting people interested in the story. So for me, Grafton is more about, it of course is about the story, but it thematically makes sense for me to involve the community piece because Grafton is a place, as a New Yorker coming to Vermont and seeing like, wow, people really do take their time for hours making that thing. And, they'll take hours to make that meal, and like the freshness and the pride behind some of the nicer restaurants that are here. And not that obviously that happens in New York and LA, but you don't feel like you're in this pressure cooker to pump out these things. And people really do such fine work here and craftsmanship, and that it's because of the space that you have here. It's because of the time. It's because of it's because of Vermont that you have that. So Grafton to me was a place where it's like just below heaven. It's a place that you can go where you can explore your talents, your creativity, your passions, your relationships without having the stress of work, of money, of capitalism, of, survival. That you can really become this beautiful, expressive person. Now, obviously, that's an exaggeration from the reality of Vermont, because the truth is we all work, and a lot of Vermonters work multiple jobs, and but it's just there's a layer of that here that I wanted to expand upon and sort of highlight and exaggerate so that people could see that this sort of simple life, right? We're so inundated with information and online and technology and all of these things, politics. It was a place for things to be really simple. And so, because that's a layer of Vermont, I also feel like in the story, in the short film, she becomes Paula, but when she's in Grafton, she's so not used to. She's like a product of the gig economy, and I'm getting into the feature now, so it's a little different than the short. But such a product of the gig economy, and everything's kind of disjointed. And then she comes here, and it's like a breath of fresh air. And she has a lot of resistance to it because we are like, life isn't supposed to be like this. We're supposed to be stressed out. We're supposed to be making deadlines. We should be, working and working and working, productive. And this place is this gorgeous place. So I felt like it was also an opportunity to get the community involved, because there are so many great creators, artisans, craftspeople here to have sort of like a localized product placement within this film. So that part of the backstory, the marketing behind the film, the social media, all those aspects could be about the different artisans that have made the different things within the film. So
Interesting.
instead of it being like, big Hollywood movies be like, I want Superman to be holding a Coke can, this is more of a localized product placement.
You would have somebody pouring a local maple syrup jug.
And I do. And I have, a very specific type of syrup in one scene. And then I have.
This is in the feature that you're working on?
This is in the feature.
Wow,
Yeah.
nice. Look at you. That's so great.
Yeah. It's an exciting part of the story. And because it directly reflects in the film thematically, I don't feel like it's a gimmick. I really don't like gimmicks, and I'm very suspicious of them. And gimmicks don't stay. Gimmicks just wash right through you. Like they pique your interest for a second and then they're gone. I think that this is something that could kind of build a little bit of an infrastructure, because Grafton is set to be a feature, but I also had originally intended it for it to be a series before there was a big strike, and we were headed towards that. And so I'm hopeful that the feature will inspire the series. And so all those aspects that I talk about, and I realize that it's quite ambitious, but all those aspects that I talk about in the feature will be continued throughout the series. And there'll be a website where you can kind of discover those products that are made by people here, and you can go directly to their sites and purchase them. So that's part of the community piece. And then I'm also working on a graphic novel within the story that I'm hoping, I won't say any names because I don't know for sure yet, but hoping to get somebody local involved in that as well.
Wonderful. Bryan, I know that you are looking to get this made. Can you tell me about what that looks like to have this made into a feature film? Are you having to do things that you haven't had to do before in terms of types of people that you have to interact with, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, complete transparency, I'm a complete newbie at this part of it. I'm lucky to have randomly met another producer in the area, Emma Schlenoff, who just wrapped a feature here called The Obelisk.
Which I'm familiar with because the team that was filming that was staying in the inn in my village. Did I tell you about this?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so the inn is closed, and I was driving by and I see all these people outside the inn, and I immediately knew those are like not Vermont people. I just knew. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I found out that it was people here filming a movie. But anyhow, but can you tell me about what a producer does? So a producer is the person that takes this idea, the script, and actually, it's like the project manager. It's the person that arranges all of the people, the actors, lighting, sound, finds the places that you physically have to bring all of your equipment. They basically make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's all different types of producers, but yeah, overall, like that's what they do.
And a producer's that's not a creative role, or is it?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that it is a very creative role. You kind of have this bird's eye view of the entire every aspect of making this film, and there's room for creative input in shaping and molding from that person.
Okay.
Emma in particular is that person.
Okay.
There's some people who might just be technical, like project managers, but there's people who are so passionate about film that they're able to like give a lot of input and sculpt. I mean, she even influenced my writing, so it's a touch point on every aspect.
Makes sense. Okay. So you have a producer. And who is this person? Yep.
And my lead actress, Catherine Partington, is also a producer on this film. And Nina Fiore, who's the executive producer on the short, is likely joining us again on the feature. And she's one of the writers and producers on The Handmaid's Tale. So she is more helping me in a creative capacity with story, because she's very good at story, and she teaches as well. So I get a lot from that relationship creatively because, I'm someone who has been mostly, off Broadway, making some of my work, communicating it more clearly to more people is something that I'm trying to get better at.
Okay, I can see how that would be a thing if you are in a smaller audience. If you're looking to do something to a broader audience, that's a different language, not just words, but visually,
Yeah.
and how you pacing all of these elements to it. So what are you looking, what do you need? Do you need people to invest? Do you need someone to say, I'm willing to actually make this? Like, what is it you're looking for the next step?
Lots of things. We're looking for people to get involved. Obviously, we need $1.2 million. So that we were looking for investors, and we're headed to AFM, which is the American Film Market in Vegas, in November, a place I swore I would never go, and now I'm going. And but we also need, obviously, a lot of people don't have that kind of money to invest, but we also need people in Vermont, in this area, from Bellows Falls, Chester, Springfield to Guilford, Vermont. We are looking for people to get involved, and maybe they could, put up some of our actors, or maybe they can provide a location, or maybe they own a restaurant and can give us deal on catering. We're looking because Vermont doesn't have tax credits. So that's why a lot of people don't shoot here. They shoot in Massachusetts, where you get 30% back. And a lot of producers and investors, they want to see that. But we're really trying to keep this a Vermont project. So one of the ways that we could do that is convincing investors and other production companies, if they work with us, that we're going to be able to get great locations at a very low price. So that 30% we would get from Massachusetts, they charge you like thousands of dollars because they're onto that. So to keep this a Vermont-based project, we really want to shoot here, and we could use community support to help make that happen.
And do you have a plan to reach out to the community to get that support?
It's mostly word of mouth. Everything, all the locations that I got for the short, they were all from relationships. So we're hoping to do the same thing.
If someone is listening to this and they are interested in helping with a location, what would they do?
Go to graftonthefilm.com, and there's a contact form.
Okay. I want to get back to that $1.3 million. So I assume when you're going to this thing in Vegas, there's all kinds of people that are presenting their films, looking for investors. How does it, like, what is the selling point? Is it about, are investors looking for, like, what are they looking for in a film?
Depends on the investor. Some people are looking for, like, they really love story and they want a really good story, and then they can get passionate about that story and they want to get behind it, and they obviously see its potential to make money. But even some of the producers that or investors that we've approached, some of them could just be like, you're great people to work with, which is a huge part of the business. Like, an actor could be amazing, but if they're a nightmare to work with, you're not going to work with them.
I mean, it sounds like any aspect of business, because
Absolutely.
any element of business, there's always risk. So there's like the numbers part, but then there's also like, all right, can I work with this person, because that could be, things will fail if you're unable to work with someone, even if it is a great script and a great idea. If someone is a nightmare, you're not even going to bother.
Right. And of course it's a business. Like, the money comes first. Like, they want to see that has potential in the market. But all those other elements, they really mean a lot.
Movies just sound so, I always hear that it's so, you just don't know. You never know what is going to be a hit, what isn't going to be a hit. I hear all the time, like, these big movies that were so successful, and people that were filming them were thinking, we had no idea. Like your friend who was in the Blair Witch Project, that ended up being like the number one, independent movie or something of all time. And I'm sure when he was making that, he never imagined that. Who knew what they were going through day to day, trekking through the forest, filming that thing, which I actually just rewatched that movie. That's so interesting that you bring that up. I just rewatched it a month ago. Yeah, it just sounds like it's just, you do the best you can. You do the best you can, and you try to make good decisions, and you try to express a creative idea. I think telling a story, I think everything based on a story, stories relate to people, people relate to stories, and wonderful. Well, Bryan, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you came and hung out with me, being my first interview here in my studio here in Bellows Falls.
It's a great space.
And it's a great space. So it was really nice getting to know you, and I wish you the best. And this seems so exciting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.